Hi everyone, it's Donelle McAdams, and I am here today to show you panel A of the Q3 box, which was Churn Dash. And so those of you that have the box, you're going to find your stuff in here that you need, and I'm going to show you what you're going to be using. So you have a panel that looks like this. And then you're going to be using one piece. It happens to be this oval right here out of the Butterflies in Flight template set. And then you're going to be using both pieces out of the Churn Dash package. So there are two on one. So I shouldn't say both pieces, but both templates. And those are Spin Effect 7, the 3-inch and the 5-inch. So let me set these aside here. This is my finished panel. And the way I chose to finish it is so that you could see it done in steps. So this will be the first step that we will be doing. And then this would be the second step. This would be the third step. And then the final, add it in the center and be finished. So you can choose how much of this you actually want to do, because some of it I think gets a little repetitive. I'm going to go ahead and show you how this is done. I'm going to use a white thread on a purple because that's what I have left, so that you can actually see that. So let me see what I've got here. Yeah, it's on purple. So I'll set this aside. I finished mine up by bringing the front to the back, and mine finishes right at 13 inches. So you can decide what you choose to do with yours. I have put my back on mine, and I have taught this one so many times that I've got some teaching going on here, but we're going to use this piece, and I'm going to use white thread, and I think that will make it easy enough for you to be able to see. So the first piece we're going to use is that little oval that's called the 1.5 by 3 inch oval, which means when it's stitched, it's 1.5 this way. So if I were to lay this down, actually it measures 1.5. And then this direction, it's measuring 2.5. So actually this is I think a 2 by 3 inch when it's stitched out. I've got it covered up with my stable tape. Now this can be a little bit tricky because it's a very small piece. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's get over here so we can actually see what's going on. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start right there in that corner. And I am going to lower my needle so that it's right in that corner and pick up that thread. Get my tweezers here. There we go. And get it pulled out. Put my foot back down and put it right back in the corner. So what I'm going to be doing, let me get the original so I can show you, is I am going to be going around the center like this, and then I'm going to go out and do this and this, and the same thing all the way around all of those. So it's only using that template. So I'm going to put it up against there. Now, when you're doing this, you're going to need to use that spacing gauge. So you're going to measure from that very point right there out at a diagonal. Okay, because we want the needle to land right there. So we're going to put this right at that point and stitch to that diagonal. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So you can choose whether you turn it or you just do the side to side. I think I do better turning it. That one looks a little bit, well, not when I turn it around, but you have to measure at the diagonal because of the oval shape. And I think you can see that there. So I'm going to be right back to where I began. Now, rather than stopping, I'm just going to get my threads out of the way, and I am going to continue with this same shape, only it's going to go out that way unless I change it like this, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to turn that so that it goes out like this. And then, believe it or not, the next one, because you don't want to go into this square, I'll have to do backwards. Hopefully you can see back there that I'm measuring so that it comes back in. And then you can remember this one went out, so I can turn it this way and measure to come back into that point. We're going to go out this way. And then this one goes in this way. Now, I can tell you, I'm not good at stitching that at all. I'm going to try it so that you can see what's actually happening. I'm measuring out that direction, and then I'm going to stitch to that point. Now, when I get to this point, it needs to match that, so it's going to go out that direction. I still measure this way. This one goes out. Gotta find my corner. There we go. So you came right to that corner, and then this one is the one that's going to come back in this direction. I'm going to turn it this way. And honestly, if you were doing a churn dash this size, this is really about all you would have to do regarding what is required of stitching on batting. And it makes a pretty nice design there. We're almost back to the beginning. Got my left hand here, holding that in place to get down to that point. So we have pretty much succeeded in working quite a bit of stitching in one pass. Now, for those of you that haven't seen how to do this, I'm going to raise my needle, raise my foot, and pull away. I'm going to pull this back to that very same spot, put that needle down, and bring it back up. This time, I'm pulling up bobbin thread. So whichever one is moving, which happens to be that one, I'm going to leave it about 8 inches long, cut my needle thread, and now what I have are my 2 starting threads and my 2 ending threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fingers and flip it around in a loop. I'm going to take my side threading needle and put it right through that loop and pull this down. And because I'm using a needle instead of just pulling it, I can control where I put that knot. And I don't want the knot on the surface of my fabric. So I pull my needle out. There's my knot. And now I can just take those and thread them in that side threading needle and bury by going right back in there and pulling all of that through. So my knot's already pulled through. I'll pull this up close to you so you can see it. I'm going to pull those threads up. And right there is where I started and stopped. Okay? So that's the first step of what I did on this kind of teaching panel that I'm working with. And I think you can see it better with that white thread. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add these pieces in, or those stitchings. There's 3 of them there. And there's an easy way to do that. So first of all, you got to think about what works for you. Remember, I said I'm not very good with it in my left hand. So I'm going to put it in my right hand, and I'm putting this edge here on the edge of what I've stitched. So that means when I come here, I'm going to put my foot down, and in that row of stitching is where I'm going to pull my bobbin thread up. So once I get that bobbin thread pulled up, I'm going to go ahead and put the foot back down and get that needle back in that spot. And when I put my template back up against there, I'm going to be stitching over to this side. So I'm going to stitch from that row to this row. So let's do that. Stopping in that stitching. And then I'm simply going to take a couple of stitches in my previous row there until I get to the point where the edge of my foot right here is touching my previous line that I just stitched. And I've got one more teensy stitch to take, although I took like 3. So now this edge is right along there. So I can line this template back up on the next line, the one I just stitched, and stitch back over to there. Now this is the way you'll be able to see it a whole lot easier, because I'll just keep that template back, and I'm just going to take a few stitches so that this edge is now lined up with the template. And I went just a bit too far. There we go. And now I'll line the template up again. Now don't think you've done something wrong when the template doesn't line up exactly. Just get close there. And when you come back over here, because we've been stitching in that, you can stitch a couple that way and a couple this way. Lift your needle, lift your foot. And this time, since you did that little bit of a back stitch, go ahead and pull up those bobbin threads like we did, but this time you can just cut all of them. And that way you have secured it and the threads are not sticking out the back. Now, since this is just a practice, I'm just going to cut that because I would need to have secured that some way. So that's one. Remember, we're going to come to this line, this edge here. My foot seems a little bit loose. There we go. So I'm going to put that on there, put that foot down and the needle down right in that line. And this time I am going to go ahead and bring up the bobbin thread. And I'm going to go a couple stitches on that line so it will be kind of like a back stitch. And I won't have to worry about the securing of the threads. So line it up, stitch over to this line. And now we're going to stitch a couple of stitches over that. You'll see that it's now lined up. The foot is lined up right with that edge. I'm going to line this up and go back over to this side. Do a couple stitches till the edge of the foot's lined up, and stitch back. Do a couple of stitches in the side there. Pull that bobbin thread up. You'll get a lot of practice on this one of doing this particular type of a finish. So it doesn't matter how far you pull it up, you just got to have it up there. We're going to turn this, and we're out here on this one. Foot up and next foot against that, needle down, needle up in the stitch line. Put your foot back in that place and the needle down. Oh, forgot to do a couple stitches. Got my bobbin up there. My foot was walking away. Do a couple stitches. Line that up. Stitch a couple stitches this way. One more. Line it up with the previous stitching and go back. Go across. Foot is lined up with that line. Couple stitches either way. Pull up that bobbin thread. You'll get really used to doing this and you'll love this method because it saves you a lot of time. So once you've pulled up those bobbin threads, you can just cut them off. So let me just show you what that's looking like up close. You can see you got some stitches right along here that are in the previous line. We got one more here to do. I always have to think, which way am I headed? Okay, I'm going to do a couple of stitches right in that line. Line the edge of your template with your foot and what you've previously stitched there. Stay right in that stitching. Check to make sure you're lined up with that line. Go back to the other side. A few stitches either way. Not either way, a few stitches away from you there. I have to think, did I do all three? Yep. So now we're just going to do a couple stitches in place. Bring up that bobbin thread. Foot down. And bring up that tail so you can just cut it off. So that's the second step. You've already got 2 of those steps completed at that point. Now again, you could stop there. You wouldn't necessarily need to do anything else. Now the way the book or the instructions are written for you is you do another one around this out here. So you're going to come here and here. And I did mine a little bit different just to keep it going. So they have you doing one in here on each of these. Well, I went ahead and did it that way because you can only do one corner at a time. There's no way to connect from here over to there unless you were to come out in this outer edge, which would be hidden in your binding. You could do that if you wanted, but we're going to do it the way the instructions are set up, and it will look like this right here. So I'm going to start in a corner. We're going to go into here, here, and here. And it doesn't really matter which corner you start with. So let's just start right there. Put the needle in. And again, you're measuring. This is not as big of an arc because the distance is not as long. What happened to my spacing gauge? This is why it's good to always have a couple handy. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to measure that 1/4 of an inch right there. Come to that spot right there. And this one's going to go out that way unless I decide I want it to go this way. And I think I do. So rather than going out in that direction, I'm going to do this direction. No, that's going to cover up too much. Got to do it this way, guys. Come right to that corner there. And right there. Now, if you were doing this with all of these, you could actually then go ahead and just start doing this one over here. So you've got, options of what you want to do. What I'm going to do is go ahead and stitch with a straight line down to this corner right here. Again, this is not the way it is in the book, but you can do whatever you want to do. So I'm going down to there, and then I will go here. And this one's the one that's backwards. To that point. And then we'll come to this point. Okay. So now we're going to take this, line it up. So we're going to essentially stitch in a ditch that's not a ditch. I'm going to measure my 1/4 of an inch. I can go backwards this time instead of coming to the front. It will get the same thing accomplished. And just that quick. We got one more here to do. Measure that 1/4 of an inch. Right to that corner. Measure your quarter to this corner, which again looks like it's going to be backwards, but it's not. And then this one comes this way. We've got one more side to stitch so that it all matches. And we'll be back to exactly where we began. And so on this one, I'm going to do a couple little back stitches, pull up that bobbin thread, there we go, and cut that right off. All right, and again, that's plenty enough stitches, but we've got one more template of 2 different sizes that we want to work in with this. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to draw from corner to corner. So that we know exactly where our center is. And I am going to do the, well, they have you doing the ovals. So you could do the ovals, or I'm going to use a different template. You see the ovals right there? You could use the ovals from the butterfly, or you could use this template. And I'm going to use this one on the angle. This is the bigger one. So I'm going to come right there in the center and pull up that thread. And we'll do the ones that are pointing out to the corners. I'm going to do the 4 big ones. Make sure you remember to put your stable tape on. It's always fun to see what designs you get when you do something different. Now I'm going to raise my foot by lifting in the back, that extra lift, and pull it out through that needle opening. Make sure you don't trim off the wrong threads, but because I've stitched over them a couple times, I can go back and trim those threads. And this time we're going to do the little ones. So I have to lift up again, and we're going to do those out this direction. And you could mix and match. You could do some ovals and some of the Spinifex 7. Now, when I get back to that center, I like to call it, I just kind of dance in the center. So I'm just going to do a couple stitches around in a little tiny spot, raise up that foot, get my template out of there, put the needle back in, and raise up that bobbin thread. So there we have the stitching, and you can see what that one looks like. And on this one, everything is the same, except we use the smaller oval templates from the butterflies in flight to do the center part. So I hope that helps you realize there's a lot you can do with the simple oval here. There's a lot more things you could do with this too, but that's what this particular panel was designed for in your box. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Shoot me an email, or we will watch on the taping of this to see if there's anyone that has any questions. So thanks for joining me, everyone. Bye now.